Buen día. Mi nombre es...
Good morning. I'm Cristianita Musso, and I will introduce GeneXus Multiplatform. In the previous presentation by Germán Asís, he spoke about the same, but I will have a different approach.
La parte de interfaz de usuario, yo he hablado...
So I will talk about a layer that refers to BL, business logic. This, something else. I will talk about a pathway we will start to get to the multi-platform. What we did, what things we will release. This presentation is for people who are curious about how things are created, and for those who do extensions or want to do extensions, and it will help you understand how it all works so that you can integrate. I will start with guessing. What does a penguin have in common with an apple and a window? Yes, exactly. All of them run GeneXus. Good. All right. I will tell you how my presentation will be divided. It's going to be like a story, bringing things from the past, from the present. We'll show a demo of what we have working and what we plan for the future. Let's start with the past. The beginning of GeneXus, more or less, but I will start better from a transition we did some time ago when we went from 9.0 to X version, and we have them in offer.net. I want to highlight two options in terms of architecture that helped us in this transition to a multi-platform. One is that we chose the CTAD language. It was called .NET, and then it was called .NET Framework. It only runs in Windows. And now it's called .NET, but it's multi-platform. So we moved from one to the other, basically. And in my the second architecture decision was to divide into layers. We had a monolith, and we decided to be tidier in a way, and we divided it into layers for business users and data and UI. And as we have the layers, we can divide and modify what we have in each layer. So we started with this X version that had layers. It had the internet user layer, the BL, the business layer, and the framework and prologue. And prologue, for those of you who do not know, at the beginning of Nicolas's keynote, he talked about symbolic artificial intelligence. Prologue is that, basically. The 75,000 rules he mentioned, right? They are in the prologue language. And this is important because this is the engine that generates and creates the code. And finally, the data layer, where we keep the KBs in that SQL server. So these are the three layers that run in Windows, used to run and still run in Windows. So we wanted to transit to the multi-platform, and the first thing we changed was the UI layer. We went from .NET Framework to web technologies, JavaScript, HTML, and so on. And we did all he showed to you. like an IDE that runs, and behind it, oh, sorry, one thing that I have to point out. We released this a few years ago for some people to try it, and they could use their browsers. And at the bottom, it all run in Windows with virtual images. So people would go via the browser and didn't know what was behind or below. A year ago, precisely, more or less a year ago, we released something that changed the world, and that's ChatGPT. So we saw an opportunity to do something different based on chats. And we changed the user layer, transited to a chat. With natural language, you could ask them to give you a system to do something, and that system, that is called GeneXus Next, would do it for you. So that UI layer always could also run in the browser. And at the bottom, what you cannot see is still running in virtual modality. This is what we had so far. Now, I will tell you what we've been working in the last few months and what we will release very shortly. There are two things we want to improve. First, we want to integrate the IDE web that Herman showed with the chat AI as one single thing in GeneXus Next to embrace all this. So you start talking to the system and create a system by talking, and then you click a button and you go to the IDE in the web and keep on working, and then you can have an assistant that will help you and so on. And you would even have a possibility to go back to the previous and work using voice and go and come back as you wish. That's the type of integration we want to accomplish in the short term. And the second is what you don't see at the bottom. If you remember, we had that the bottom was virtual in Windows. As most of you, virtual machines are slower than containers. So what we need in order to use containers is what we want to do, multi-platforms to run in Linux. And that was a step we took in the past few months. In the last few months, we worked harder on this to change the BL layer into a layer that is multi-platform. And this implied many changes. Among them, we had to write a few things that were not even written in .NET. In the past century, they were written like normalization and closing of algorithms and the parsers and so on. We had to rewrite them in .NET. And what we did was we took many KBs that are available, that are automated. We put the input and output of each of the steps. We did a test. And we are passing those thousands of tests to ensure we will not break anything in this very fragile environment. Another thing we changed was the Prolog engine for symbolic artificial intelligence. That's a programming language, gprolog, sorry. What we used in Windows is called Aditi, and it only runs in Windows. So that was something else we had to migrate to implement Prolog. And there are two working. One is gprolog, which is open source. It's GNU Prolog. And the other is 6 tools with a closed code. And we are trying to see which one we can use. This is working in Windows. It works well. And we are completing this in the Mac environment. Then going from .NET and Internet Framework to .NET to do the new .NET required taking into account some considerations. It was not a matter of compiling only. We had to say a few things. We had to include bars for directories. They are different in Windows and Unix. Then some systems are more sensitive than others. And then there were other specific things that have to do with Windows that are not applicable in other operation systems. So these things I shared with you are the ones that you will have to bear in mind when you want to go and work in a multi-platform. To continue, we changed the way in which we packaged GeneXus. And instead of having a setup that organizes everything in a directory, we used the nuggets packages, which is the way in which .NET creates the packages. And this helps us create the GeneXus system so that it can run. And this is what we use for distribution, and I will talk about this later on. Now, coming back to the layers, we had all these layers, but now we have the bottom layers that can run in containers. That's why I have the Linux drawing down there. We could also run Magnet if we wanted. Now, I was talking about unifying UI of the new chat and the UI of the traditional IDE mode. Here we did a design effort. Germán worked on this. And we tried to unite the design. We used things that we already had, that existed, and we applied them to both users so that the transition between them was transparent and you did not find it shocking that you were changing from one thing to another. So at the end, we used the same BL, and the only thing you do is that you change from one UI to another. Now it's demo time. The demo is very special. I want to show you the BL, the one in the middle. I have to explain what you will see. First, I will tell you that this works offline. So I will turn my Wi-Fi off. I'm not doing anything else. I'm using the local BLs. So on the left of my screen, I'm showing you the IDE that Herman showed before, and to the right, the log of the BLs, because I have two BLs. One BL is on top in Mac, and the other is a BL in Docker in Linux. You can roughly see the screen for each thing. And the third thing I'd like you to see is the speed at which things work in comparison with Windows. For instance, I have the IDE functioning, and that is the one serving HTML, is also local. And I'm going to show you how long it takes. I'm going to refresh first, and there you are. Now the BL, I have the process here that's working. I'm going to cancel it. I'm going to upload it. And there it did it. Now, look how long it takes with Windows. And then I'm going to show you this one. I may be able to choose in the IDE to what BL I want to get connected. And here there are two that are local, but one could be in the cloud, for instance. And so the first thing I'm going to do is to connect to the BL here at the top. We're going to see it move, and then I'm going to create a KB. Not very creative. I'm going to put Mac as a name. Well, never mind the name. And here you can see how the corresponding load is moving, the one that corresponds to the BL of the Mac. And down below you have the output that the user would see. And this is taking some seconds. That's it. That's the creation of a KB in GeneXus Web. Now I'm going to create an object, a traditional one. I'm going to create a customer. And I'm going to create this ID. I'm going to put a pattern. And it's the same. You can see how the BL is working. It doesn't matter if you see what it's doing. It's a load. And see that here, down below, you can see what the user would see. And that's at the end of the case. I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to close this KB. I'm going to connect now to Docker, and I'm going to open a KB. Let's see how long it takes. Another session now. What to put country. The same attributes. And this is the other pattern. Oh, something else I haven't said. You have to look down below because I'm connected to the Docker that Linux has, and that's the one that's moving. It's finished. And that's the demo, basically, to show you how it works. That something is working in both Linux and Mac. Now here, I'm saying that Herman was here, and if you want to see a demo of the entire IDE and functionalities, it's better that you see his talk, because it was very good. And now I have the future part. This is what I've got in my demo. I had two
BLs. It doesn't matter. It has no meaning in real life. So what I want is that to obtain multi-perform GeneXus is to get the Dockers that I have there and run everything in native without Dockers. So I'm going to take out that Docker. The next thing I'm going to do is that instead of executing it on the browser and have an app inside a browser, I want an app that can be seen as part of the platform, that is integrated with, for example, in the case of Mac, instead of having these icons, instead of having these little bears to use the menu up there. But that's a detail, but you can do that in many other things integrated to the operating system. And so I'm going to use Electron. And then the last thing left is that Mac doesn't allow you to execute data and SQL Server on the Mac. So we were thinking about changing the place where we store, where we save the KB in another server. It can't be SQL. We are testing other ones. And in this way, we've got everything outside the Docker, basically, in multi-platforms. And this can run in Linux, it can run in Windows, and it runs in Mac. And this is what we call GeneXus Multiplatform. Something else I haven't told you is that this computer I've got, it's one of the new ones that has a ARMS 64X. So apart from running on Intel 34 and 64, it would also run on ARMS, and it's and now we have extensibility. Let me tell you three things about this. The first one, the question of nugget distribution. GeneXus, well, it's not that it's installed in a directory and then extensions get things on top and with a setup or hopping up things that are executed later on. It's going to be the other way around. GeneXus will run on its own, will look for the things it needs in the repositories in extensibility. So those who want to work with extensibility simply have to get a nugget package and put it in a repository that we haven't got yet, but we're going to have them. And you're going to have those extensibilities. So we're going to use Nugget for .NET, and we're going to use NPN for the extensibility of the IDE. Now, the second thing is the extensions are going to be governed and managed by KB. This means that I'm going to have GeneXus, different GeneXuses, depending on each KB. I may have a KB that only has mobile, but not web, and the other way around. I may have a small project making APIs, not the entire thing, and so on. I can also have the extensibility of word includes or tools, and I may have a KB made with ones or not with the others, and I don't have a GeneXus that has all the things that are really meddlesome because I'm not going to use them. And the last thing I wanted to share with you is that we're going to release an SDK for those doing extensibility, and we're going to be making 2 releases in the short term, let's say. One is going to be in the shorter term, and it's for the IDE to integrate to GeneXus Web. And I'm sorry, he corrects himself, GeneXus Next. That's the one we're going to be releasing, and the SDK is going to be quite similar to the one we've already got, with not many changes in compatibility. We're only going to change .NET, multiplatform.NET. You won't have to change anything in relation to the integration with the SDK. And then after that, we'd like to work in some things that we still have to do, the company changed from Artec to GeneXus. However, there are some spaces in that chat that are called Artec or tech something, and not the last ones we did, but we want to change that name, and to change that name means we have to change the compatibility of the extensions that are already built. And the second thing we want to do, that it's incompatible, is to improve the interfaces. We want to use something more modern, and we want to have asynchronic interfaces, for instance. That's one of the cases. And that would be all. Just an overview now. Products then, we have GeneXus Win that will continue existing for many years. And then from now onwards, we're going to have a product called GeneXus Next AI. And that's what's already started. It started this year. We're going to be adding modules to it. At the beginning, we're going to have the first integration, as I told you. We're going to be adding the GeneXus Web to be able to move from one to the other. And then on the other hand, in the future, we are going to be able to execute it in native, that is, without any connection to your Macs. However, that doesn't seem to be in the long. That seems to be in the long term, but in the mid-term, we're going to do something similar to what I showed in the demo, and that is to have Dockers installed, and I'm going to have the Dockers there, and I'll be able to do it locally. So the important thing is that you don't have to connect. You needn't connect to anything. That's an important contribution. And once we have the multi-platform, I won't even need Dockers, but that's an intermediate way of doing something more quickly. That is all. Thank you.